Welcome to the You Triumph podcast, where we explore the triumphs, challenges, and the power of giving back. I'm your host, Trevor Sterling, and this season's theme is Be the Ladder. We'll highlight individuals who have not only achieved success, but have used their journey to uplift others, overcoming social barriers along the way. From their motivations to the lessons they've learned, we'll explore how they've become a ladder for others, proving that real success is about lifting those around you. Thank you for joining this You Triumph Be the Ladder series podcast, and I'm delighted to introduce my first guest. This is somebody who I would describe as a true angel. She is a nurse, somebody who has climbed the ladder within the nursing profession, nearly 40 years as a nurse. But not only has she climbed the ladder specialising in children's services, she has gone on to do phenomenal work helping children in different communities. And we're going to come to that a bit later on. She is highly qualified, multi-award-winning nurse, former Mary Seacole, and indeed current Mary Seacole ambassador. I'm delighted to introduce Joan Myers. Joan Myers OBE, how are you?
I'm all right, thank you. Thank you so much for inviting me along today to this.
Well, I'm absolutely delighted to have you, Joan, because you are somebody who epitomises being the ladder. And I have a mantra: don't just aspire to climb the ladder, aspire to be the ladder. So we are going to climb this metaphorical ladder and learn a bit about your personal journey as well as your professional journey. And then we're going to just really talk about how you have been a tremendous ladder. So can we just start really with a question I ask all of my guests? One or two pinch yourself moments. They are the moments where you would say to yourself, I cannot believe I did this. I cannot believe that I've achieved this. So can you just give an idea, one or two pinch yourself moments?
Well, my first pinch myself moment was when I got my master's, when I received the results to say that I passed my master's. I went and told everybody, even the people that didn't need to know, people that didn't know me. And the next morning when I woke up, the first thing that came into my mind was, I've got my master's. And I started crying. And I was crying and crying. And then I phoned my mum. I said, guess what, Mum? I got my master's. And she says, me know already. You did tell me yesterday. You tell everybody. I goes, yeah, but they told me at school that I was below O-level standard and incapable of writing an essay. And I've got my master's. It was like, at that point, it just suddenly hit me that I could have done it a long time ago, but I didn't know that I had it in me until I actually achieved it. So that was my first pinch moment. And the second one was when I became the first and only nurse consultant for community children's nursing in the whole of the UK in 2003. And I remember when they phoned me and offered me the job, I was in the middle of Oxford Street when they phoned to say that I've got the job, and that the woman said that my manager said, it will make our day if you accept this job. I said, it will make my day, my week, my month, my year, my life. Of course I accept the job. Yeah,
Wow.
so they were the two really great moments that I remember.
And it's lovely because, and we're going to step through your career, but you've referred to two things which are just so aligned with your passion, which is nursing. Because you could have said, for example, receiving an OBE, but that would be more about you. And you talked about things which are really closely connected to what you do on the ground, which is nursing and qualification, which is so lovely. So let's just, you touched on your academic qualification. You talked about the conversation with your mum and what you were told by the teacher. So can you just tell us a bit about what life was like growing up, your background? And I'm going to ask you, did you do GCSEs or O-levels?
I did O-levels.
Yeah, I did O-levels too. Gives away our age. So how many O-levels did you get, Joan?
Well, before I failed my O-levels first time and second time because the teachers told me that I was below O-level standard and I shouldn't have been doing it in the first place. And then it suddenly hit me that it wasn't really up to anybody else, it was up to me. And so and you only have 3 goes, and they said if you fail again, you're not going to have another chance for the rest of your life. So it was at that point I sort of buckled under and sort of let me just study. And I did study. I think I was just messing about. I was always talking and doing lots of things. You just think you could just do it. I started studying, reading the books and studying. And the third time I did my O-levels, I did 8 O-levels. I only needed 5. I did O levels because I wanted to prove them wrong. And then I went on to do my A levels, but then I didn't do the exams for the A levels because I didn't really need them. I was just trying to make a point.
And so you didn't go to university, I'm assuming.
I went to college and I did my but I went to university afterwards for nursing, but not for my O levels and A levels. I went to sixth form college. Yeah.
Now, interesting enough, we're going to cover your career, which sort of starts as a nurse around 1984, 85,
1982, I started my nurse training.
82.
Mm.
And since then, I mean, you've been taking exams or achieving qualifications right through your career. I mean, it's not something which you did for the early part. I notice that you've expanded your horizon, whether it be around coaching, whether it be around diversity, etc. So that's something you've done right through your career. Why has that been important to carry on that?
I think it's really important, especially as a black woman or a black person, is that you have to prove that you could do all the things that you could do. And when I did my nursing, it was very rare at that time. I did the registered general nursing, which was like a 3 year training rather than the 2 year enrolled nurse training. And that was the 3 year one, got you up the ladder. So I was able to progress up the ladder quite quickly. And I remember seeing a black director of nursing, they were called nursing officers in those days, and she was always encouraging me and everything, and they changed the structure in the NHS, and suddenly she became from a nursing officer to being like a sister working in outpatient department in a completely different hospital. And the reason why is she worked her way up the ladder, but she didn't have any paperwork to prove the different levels that she got up to. Because in those days, you could, as long as you knew the right people and you did the right things and said the right things, it was easy to progress. And she was one of the only people that I saw as a black person at that level, and she came all the way down to being at a lower level. So I decided at that point, I'm going to make sure I've got a certificate for every single thing that I do. So even when it was not needed, and one of my best certificates is when I did my management course. It was an NVQ level 4 in the competent manager. And I felt so happy to have this certificate that I stuck it on my wall in my office so that everybody could see that I was a manager. Although I'd been managing for many years, but it was so good to have the certificate to prove it.
You've always backed up your positions with qualification in some shape or form, right through your career. So we talked about, we touched on your early stages of life. Can you just tell us a bit about your mother, father, what they did? Was your mother a nurse or?
Yes, my mother was a nurse. My dad died when I was quite young, and my mum had five of us to grow up on her own, and she dedicated her life to us, and she gave me a nurse's uniform when I was 3 years old as a Christmas present, and from that day I decided I wanted to be a nurse, and I used to carry a little tin of plasters to school with me, and I remember when I was 7 years old, plasters were put on everybody at school whether they needed it or not, but when I was 7, or was it when I was 9 years old, my best friend who lived around the corner, she cut her finger. She wouldn't allow her mother to put the plaster on. She had to come to my house and I put the plaster on. So I said I became a nurse very early, putting that plaster on. So my mum was a nurse, and when I was 11, she told me not to do nursing because she was an enrolled nurse. She said, "You won't like it, they won't treat you good, they're racist." I said, "No, no, I want to be a nurse, I don't want to be anything else." And she made me promise to do the registered general nursing rather than the enrolled nursing, which was the 2 year practical one. And so that's what I did.
And where did your mum come from?
Jamaica, she was from Jamaica.
Some part of the Windrush generation
Yes,
came in the
definitely, yeah.
late
She came in the
1950s,
1960s, in the 1960s, yeah, early 60s.
1960s. And where were you brought up?
I was born in Wimbledon, and I grew up in Fulham. Yeah,
Oh, you're a South Londoner like me.
yeah.
So, having gone through school, you talked about not doing so well when you got to O level,
That's because I was always talking.
but you'd always had this passion to be a nurse, and it reminded me. We're going to come to this a bit later on of your relationship with Mary Seacole, actually, because obviously Mary Seacole became a nurse really inspired by her mother too, which is
Yes.
like yourself. And so you then go through the school years, and you're going to get your first job in nursing. Could you just tell us a bit about that?
As soon as I finished school, I did 6 months. I had to wait 6 months before I could start the nursing because that's when it started. I applied at Lewisham Hospital. Well, that's where did my nurse training, but I applied at other places as well. I didn't get accepted. I got accepted at Lewisham General Hospital. So I did my general training there. But I always wanted to be a children's nurse. I didn't know there was a specific course for just children. at Great Ormond Street Hospital, you could just do the training, just become a children's nurse. So I did adult training, and then I found out about the children's nursing, and I applied at Great Ormond Street, but they didn't take me. In those days, they asked you questions on your application form, like your mother and father's occupation and stuff, and I didn't know my father's occupation because he died when I was much younger. So I presume that was the reason why they didn't take me. But I did my paediatric course at Guy's Hospital. It was called Guy's Hospital at the time, Evelina Children's Unit, but now it's joined with St Thomas's. But when I went to Guy's, they asked me why was I there, because the actual word somebody said to me is, "We at Guys don't like Lewisham nurses," and I said, "Well, I'm not a Lewisham nurse now, am I, mate? I'm a Guy's nurse." Because they all did their general training at St Thomas's and then went to Guy's to specialise, whereas I was at Lewisham and went to Guy's because we literally just joined up. Yeah.
And what do you think inclined you to want to work with children? Because you've always had a passion around that.
I love children. I think they're just amazing. The way well, from a very young age, I just love them. They're just amazing. And anything I could do to support them and help them to be the best persons that they can be, I just always wanted to help children. And with children's nursing, they're not like adults. Adults moan and complain about everything. The child, once they're not in pain, they could be dying of cancer, they could have really serious conditions, but once they're not in pain and they're comfortable and their family's with them, or they've got their favourite teddy bear with them or whatever, they're up and about and playing and happy. So it's easier to look after them. I find it easier to look after them.
And you've had a passion around sort of community nursing as well.
In community nursing, because I always think that the child should be in with their family. That's the best place for them to be. So when I was on the ward, and I think one of the reasons why I came out into the community as well is that when I did my nurse training, I became a Christian and I wanted to go to church on Sunday, and they wouldn't allow me, give me Sundays off. The actual sister on the ward told me I should have thought about that before I came into nursing, that I can't work Monday to Friday, 9 to 5 as a nurse and expect to have every weekend off. I goes, but I don't want every weekend off, just 1 or 2 weekends a month. So somebody sent me an unpublished dissertation about working in the community as a children's nurse, and it was a new innovation at that time. There was only about 27 teams like that across the whole of England, Scotland and Wales, and I thought that's what I want to do. So I wrote my job description based on this unpublished dissertation, and I put 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, every weekend off. And then I just wrote my job description about what I wanted to do, looking after children in the community. Because before that, they had adult district nursing, but they didn't have district nursing specifically for children. And so I sent it to all the health authorities in London. I didn't hear from any of them. And then my friend told me she was working in Camberwell. So I thought, I'm not going to write to them. I'm going to just phone them up. So I phoned the HR department and I said, I want to be a paediatric home care nurse. Have you got any vacancies? And they actually said it sounded like something they were advertising, but the closing date was the day before. I said, that's okay, just send it to me now. I'll fill it in straight away. And they said yes, I think, to get me off the phone, but they didn't send it. And 10 days later, I got in contact with them because one of my mottos is to be persistent, insistent, and consistent. And when you get resistance, seek assistance. So I phoned them up. I said, I know who you are. I know where you are. You promised me this application form. I'm coming to get it today. And they said, no, it's okay. We will send it. And when they sent it, their job description was the spitting image practically of my job description. 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, with every weekend off, working in the community, looking after children that are sick at home. So I started in the community on the 15th of October 1990, right up until the 31st of August 2019. I've worked 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, with every single weekend off. And I could count on one hand the amount of Saturdays that I did do when the child was really sick or dying or poorly that I chose to look after at home so they could stay at home.
Well,
Yeah.
so you've moved through, you became a nurse consultant, but you've also become very strategic, or was very strategic as well. I mean, you've pioneered in areas around children's services. Do you want to just tell us a bit more around how you've innovated and pioneered?
Well, setting up so the first that job that I went to, I thought the team existed, so I felt quite comfortable until the day I started, and they told me that the paediatric home care team, as it was called then, it's called Community Children's Nursing Service now. The paediatric home care team starts the day with you, get the patients, get the paperwork, and tell everybody about it. And I didn't have a clue. So I went to see the guy that wrote the unpublished dissertation and asked him to be my mentor and my guide and my guru. And he was fantastic. He taught me everything I needed to know. And the whole purpose of the team was any child that was sick, that could be safely managed at home, we can do that at home. So I set up the team with nurses. There's 5 of us with specialities in different areas. And I think we were the first ones to ever have a child at home with a tracheostomy tube, a child at home on oxygen, not even just at home on oxygen. I got the child into nursery school on oxygen. So children with really complex healthcare needs, and I would link up with the hospitals, whether Great Ormond Street or wherever the child was based, and we'll bring the nurses in and we'll find out how to look after them in the hospital and then transfer it to looking after them at home. And sometimes they'll say, well, it's never been done, it can't be done. Like, of course it can, we just adapt it like this. So I set up a team in Camberwell, and then there's Southwark, and then West Lambeth, and then I went to St Mary's in Paddington, which was the first ever paediatric home care team that everything was modelled off of. And I became the team coordinator there, and I worked there for about 7 years. And then the nurse consultant role came up, and my manager, I saw it and I thought, this is fantastic, but I didn't say anything to anyone. But my manager told me, I saw this job, Joan, and I thought of you. And then she started telling me about the nurse consultant role and how it'd be really good for me to do. And I thought, you don't love me, you don't like me. I thought you really liked me. Why do you want to get rid of me? She goes, no, Joan, this is an excellent role for you. You've been here with us for 7 years. And she started telling me all the stuff that I've done, and I wrote it all down. Because sometimes you don't realise all the things that you've done. And then because she kept going on, I said, well, why don't you go and take the job then? She goes, well, if it was for health visiting, nurse consultant for health visiting, then I'll take it, but it's nurse consultant for community children's nursing, and I think you'd be the best for the role. So then I went for the role and got it, yeah. But even then, sorry, just to say, my mother said, why do you want to take that job? It's only for the white people. They're not going to give you a job like that. And because it doesn't work like that, you have to be in it to win it. You have to apply. And so I applied for it, and I was the best one for the job, and I got it.
A couple of really interesting features in that. First of all, you've always pushed yourself. And no matter what the role, you've always sort of said to yourself, I can do this. Not just that, I can make it better. And you've really worked to that. But you also mentioned race there. Can you just tell us a bit about your experiences there in terms of race? Because one of the things you've moved to do later on in your career is, one, promote nursing generally, but two, you've been, a strategic advisor. You were the chair, weren't you, of the strategic advisory group. What's led you down those two roads? So to go on and promote nursing, you're a Queen's nurse, and if you could tell our listeners what a Queen's nurse is, but you've also been the strategic advisor to the chief nurse of England. And you've been involved in diversity initiatives. There's quite a bit to unpack there, but if we start with the Queen's Nurse, if you explain to our listeners what the Queen's Nurse is.
The Queen's Nursing title is for community nurses that have done exceptional work in the community. So I got an Outstanding Service Award from the Queen's Nurses Institute, and then found out I didn't know about them. I just thought I was a Queen's nurse because it had on my one of my badges, when my district nursing badge had Queen Nurses Institute on it, so I presumed I was a Queen's nurse. But it was only then that I found out that I wasn't, and you have to apply, and they actually ask for nominations from patients. So it's the patients that actually say and confirm that you are who you say you are and that you've done what you've done, and also from your manager as well. So then I became a Queen's nurse, which is fantastic. Great support, great work that they do. I'm actually now a fellow of the Queen's Nurses Institute and one of their trustees as well. Wow. They do phenomenal work for community nurses. So I can't remember all the questions that you've asked.
Well, just so our listeners know, the Queen's Nursing Institute is a charity of which the late Queen was the patron.
That's right.
So it was very close to her heart, wasn't it? So it's a big thing to become a Queen's nurse. The other thing was becoming a strategic advisor to the chief nurse of England.
Okay, so I saw another senior black nurse, Yvonne Coghill, CBE, and she worked at the Department of Health, and she was leaving. She said she was leaving to go and do something different. And I said, I'd love to do your job. And she said, well, why don't you come and see me? So she invited me to the Department of Health, and she said, sit in this chair. This is where you will be sitting. And then she asked me some questions, and she sort of really encouraged me. And when the job came around, I applied for it, but I didn't get it because it was a professional officer for diversity in the issues of black and minority ethnic staff, how to promote them, encourage them, and challenge the system to take more black and minority ethnic staff up the ladder rather than leaving them at one level. I didn't really know much about that. I just liked the title of the role, that I'd be working in the Department of Health with the Chief Nursing Officer for England. But I got a phone call from the Deputy Chief Nursing Officer to say that I interviewed really well and not to be disappointed. It was a seconded role, and when it comes round again, apply again, but do this, and this. And she gave me a whole list of things that I needed to do. And she also asked me to speak to the other people that were on the interview panel for advice on what to do. So I took all their advice, including coaching. One of the main things was coaching and actually finding out what does it mean to look after, to actually work with in the Department of Health and stuff to do with black and minority ethnic staff. So when I applied again, I got the role, and I became the professional officer for diversity, working with Dame Christine Beasley, who was the chief nursing officer at the time. And I remembered it was very unusual. I was in an environment where everybody was white, which was no problem to me because I'm used to that. But they would make comments like, "How comes you're the only black person here?" And I say, "Well, how could you ask me that question? You guys invited me here. You must know why there's no other black person here." And then I remember somebody saying to me, "It's really strange you being here because there's no one else like you. Everybody here knows each other, and this one's related to that one and that one." And I said, "Well, I didn't parachute through the ceiling. I applied for the post, and I obviously must have been the best person for the post, so I got the post." And I think because I was very outspoken, I just said it as it is. I think people sort of liked me. I think maybe they were scared of me. I think we better get her on our side so we don't get in trouble. I don't know. But yeah.
So listeners might be curious to know why there's a conversation around race in the context of the NHS, it being such a diverse workforce. So I think it's probably now's a good time to touch on some of the very significant issues within the NHS. You know, the Snow White Peaks, the Seminole Piece, and you know the RES, the racial equality standards, all around race. In your words, can you just sort of summarise the issues that have been faced by those, particularly amongst the black community, but not just the black community, ethnic communities within the NHS around inequality?
The NHS actually came into existence in 1948, and it was a fact that if they hadn't invited people over from the Caribbean, the original Windrush generation, the NHS most probably wouldn't have survived and wouldn't be here today. They invited them over to come and work in the NHS. And we've been propping it up since 1948, which is like 76 years ago. So you would think that by now there'd be an even spread of black and minority ethnic people working in the NHS, whether from the Caribbean, India, Africa, wherever. But there's not. Most of the black nurses and professionals are usually at the lower rung of the ladder, and it's very difficult and challenging to get to the top. So I was one of the very few at the time that was able to go up, because I did registered general nursing, so I could get up the ladder quicker, whereas the enrolled nursing, the 2-year one, is more practical nursing, and it was more challenging to get up the ladder that way. And there seemed to be a very, very difficult to get from one level to the next. Promotion, training opportunities, there was always excuses. There's not enough money, not enough resources. We can't release you from the ward to go and do it. But then you will see your white counterpart being offered the role that didn't even know about the role that you told your manager about, and things like that. So it's been really, really challenging. And when you apply for a role and you get knocked back 2-3 times, after a while you just don't want to apply anymore because you don't think that there's any point. So I think that's what's happened to a lot of people. So I've recently, in the last 5 years, just after COVID, or just before COVID, 2019 it was actually, set up a black and minority ethnic leadership and talent program called the RISE program, which I run with another colleague called Mauriam. And we've been running this program for 4 or 5 years. 140 black and minority ethnic staff have done this leadership program. It's about personal impact, building your confidence. And actually I do a workshop with all the line managers that are white to talk to them about microaggression, gaslighting, and how their behaviour impacts on the black staff. And also, if you've got a black member of staff or brown member, I always say black and brown or the global majority, working with you, they've applied for promotion and they haven't got it 2-3 times, and you give it to somebody outside that's never worked in the organisation, and then asks the black or brown person to train the person to do the job that they've already told them that they're not capable of doing. It doesn't make sense. So I actually challenge the managers to think of their behaviour and how they are actually contributing to the system being the way it is.
And it's been a big part of what you do because this is part of you being the ladder, right? You've spent a lot of time coaching and training nurses so that they can hopefully apply for and successfully be promoted. And I know you've helped get a lot of nurses promoted up the ladder. This is something which has been really significant to you because of your experiences.
Yeah, because I think if I can get there, then they can get there too. And because I know of the challenges and I've been through it firsthand, I'm able to give them advice and support of what they need to do. But I think for many black nurses, because they've been discouraged over the years, they've just sort of given up. And so the leadership program we do is about personal impact, how you need to have self perception, self esteem, self worth, self confidence, and self awareness as well to help you to get there, and not always blame it on the system or the other person, even though they do often have a large bit to do with it. But we have to take responsibility ourselves.
And I have to ask this. This is fairly recent. The news in respect of the Nursing and Midwifery Council, which is the regulator for nursing. I mean, what did you feel about the recent findings around, essentially institutional racism within the regulatory body?
I mean, that is shocking in itself. The actual regulatory body that's supposed to be regulating the nurses to ensure that their code of conduct and their professional standard is up to speed, that they themselves were accused of harassment and bullying and toxic culture for the staff that they actually employ, as well as nurses that have been referred to the NMC. So the Nursing and Midwifery Council is the regulatory body of for nurses. A majority of black nurses have been referred to them, and over 50%, if not more, have been found to have no case to answer. So lots of them have been sent to the NMC for maliciously, for no reason, other than being black. I don't know why. And then they find out that it's a whole group of people that's just like 3 or 4 members of staff will pick on one person, and then they get sent to the NMC, and it destroys their career, their future. Because like for 2 years while they're waiting, or 3 years while they're waiting for the NMC to sort things out, it just gets worse and worse, and they're not allowed to work in that time, so they lose their livelihood, their family possibly, they lose their hair, their mind, their future, their career because of what they're going through, and the NMC perpetuates this and makes it worse. So that's why I was totally incensed. I couldn't believe it when I heard that the NMC, in the organisation, the people, the staff that they employ, as well as the people on the panels as well, their behaviour is actually hindering and preventing black nurses from progressing.
And you were quite vocal on this, weren't you? I think through social media. But did you not go to their head offices as well and protest?
No, I just think it's just. I didn't think anybody was doing anything about it. I thought, why can't they just? Because if it was in another organisation, if it was found that there was racism and toxic behaviour and discrimination, and worst of all, suicide, nurses were committing suicide because they were waiting for the NMC to sort things out, and it wasn't being sorted out or whatever, and nobody was doing anything about it. And I thought if it was another organisation, they would have at least got rid of the board, the chair, the whoever, but they didn't. And I think the chief exec left before the report came out, and they were bringing the new chief exec in, who was known to have racist, to behave in a racist manner towards staff in somewhere else where she works. Unfortunately, we were able to sort of really fight, and she couldn't take. She stepped down in the end before she even started because she knew she couldn't do the role. And then the chair, I felt the chair should go, because if the chair's in charge of everything and they've known for years what's been going on, but they left the chair there, and the chair said he wanted to maintain continuity and stability. And I said, but we don't want you to maintain continuity and stability. You have to go. So I was fighting from the front, and then there's a lot of people behind me supporting me, but they weren't speaking up because they were worried about their career and their future and all the rest of it. Whereas I just think it has to be done. Somebody has to stand up and fight. Yeah.
So I'm curious to know where you get this strength and conviction from. You said you were brought up just by your mother. You didn't have a great time, as it were, through your school years. Did you experience racism at school
Oh
at
yeah,
all?
there was a teacher, she hated me. Every opportunity, I'd walk in the class and she says, Joan Myers, if you open your mouth, you are out. And I'd only just walk through the door, and then I'll say, but what did I do? That's it, out. And she'd go and stand outside my office. I'd have to stand outside her office for the whole of the class. So I got unclassified for history because I was never in my history class. And she'd come up after the class, she would come up behind me and she would start talking to me. we don't want people like you in this school. Why did you go to this school? You should have gone to the school down the road. And then I'll start crying. And then if somebody's walking past, she'll be patting me on the back. There, never mind, Joe, never mind. As soon as they walk past, then she'll be just saying all this stuff to me again. So it was really, really bad. She was awful. And when she was leaving, years later when she was leaving, I actually asked her, why didn't she like me? Why did she treat me badly? And she said, I was always smiling. She didn't know what I had to smile about all the time. She actually said that.
So,
I
so
can't help it.
how does someone with those experiences, not really given the confidence from the system, you weren't encouraged, as it were, to go into nursing really. You've gone into it, you've faced what would have been a lot of resistance to climb the ladder within nursing for the reason we've articulated, and yet you've still gone on to pioneer and lead from the front. What's giving you this conviction, this confidence to lead from the front?
I think if people say that you can't do it, it's up to you to decide that you can do it. It's not up to anybody else. And then my mum was a very strong person, and she said that we are just as good as anybody else, and don't let anybody stop you. But for me, it was Mary Seacole as well. I never heard about Mary Seacole until I started my training in 1982. I heard about Mary Seacole in 2004. I heard about Florence Nightingale, but I never ever heard about Mary Seacole. And when I heard about Mary Seacole, I actually said, if Mary Seacole could be excavated from obscurity and put in a position of prominence, then there's hope for black nurses yet. And that was what gave me the thing to really push really hard and try and help as many people as I can, because it must have been really, really challenging for her in the 18th century, 2 centuries ago, to do what she did. So for me to become an ambassador for the Mary Seacole Trust, and before that the Mary Seacole Statue Appeal, was like a really, really big thing.
And of course, in 2004 was when she was voted the greatest Black Briton.
That's when I first heard about her, yes.
And you were hugely involved then with fundraising for the charity, because of course there was this 12-year campaign to get a statue of Mary Seacole, which is now sited at St Thomas's, and you referred to your link with Guys in St Thomas's. But you were prolific, weren't you, in terms of fundraising? I know one of your tricks was to sell badges, Mary
Badges, yeah.
Seacole badges, but I mean, you raised a lot of money for the charity.
No, maybe not as much as some people, but I did do my part for the badges. I think I might have sold the most badges, maybe. And Dame Elizabeth, who was the chair at the time, she used to say, "Joan, stop badgering people," because everywhere I went, I just asked, "Say, can I have some badges?" I used to walk around with a bag of about 100 badges, and wherever I went, people had to buy the badges. And they'll say, "But I've got one already, Joan. You sold me one the last time." I goes, "But I can't see it." And they'll say, "It's on my other jacket." I go, "Well, it's on the other jacket. You need to get one for every jacket." And I remember once I went to the Chief Nursing Officers Summit. They gave me 5 minutes to speak about something completely different. And I do this all the time. I just do my own thing. I said, "Oh, while I'm here, I've got these little badges. They're only £1, but today I will sell them for £2 if you let me sing." And everybody's looking at me, and these are the chief nursing officer for England, all the chief nurses, directors of nursing in England. They're at this summit, and I'm there saying, "I'm going to sing if they buy the badges for £2." And I said, "It takes two, baby." That's what I said. And they queued up, and they all bought the badges. Also, Lord Clive Soley, I phoned him up. I said, "I've got this fantastic idea. I could invite everybody to the House of Lords for afternoon tea. We could charge them £50 a head. They can have tea, talk, and a tour. So we give them afternoon tea. You could talk to them about Mary Seacole, and then they can have a tour of the Palace of Westminster." And he goes, "Do you think people will come along?" I goes, "Of course they will." He goes, "We have to get at least 24 people." I goes, "Yeah, don't worry, I will get them." I got like 53 people. We had 2 sittings in the end to get everybody there. And he couldn't believe it. He came along and sat in the afternoon tea and went to everybody's table and spoke to them. And we raised quite a bit of money from that as well.
Well, so you were involved with the Mary Seacole Memorial Statue Appeal, which is the charity that gave rise to the statue in 2016, and then changed its name. And as you know, I took over very proud to have taken over from Lord Soley as the chair of the Mary Seacole Trust. And you're now an ambassador of the Mary Seacole Trust, again, promoting nursing and diversity in particular. But you're involved with the Florence Nightingale Foundation as well?
Yep, so the Florence Nightingale Foundation, I became one of their directors and trustees in 2019 for about 2 years. And we would, during the Florence Nightingale, they'd had, I think it was the Windrush nurses they actually sponsored the Windrush nurses. And when they went to give them and just before their graduation, the nurses were saying, well, how comes the Windrush nurses are all black, but everybody that comes and talks to them and coaches them are all white? And because I was one of the trustees, they asked me if I'd come along and speak at the Windrush event, which I did. And then they asked if I'd actually hand out the certificates to them. So from then, I sort of built up a relationship with the Windrush nurses. And then more recently, they've now managed the Mary Seacole Leadership Awards. And I thought I need to be a part of that as well. So thankfully, as part of the Mary Seacole Trust, and then because I worked with the Florence Nightingale Foundation in the past, I actually support in ensuring that Mary Seacole's name stays alive and stays prominent in whatever they do.
So you've been incredibly active within the NHS for all this time, doing incredible amounts of work. I've said you've been a children's nurse, but you've also gone on to train and coach and nurture other nurses. You've tackled diversity and issues of equality. You've been outspoken and a spokesperson for those that have suffered. And of course, all of this led to you being awarded an OBE for contribution to nursing. I mean, do you want to tell us a bit about what that experience was meeting the Queen?
For a start, I couldn't believe it when I got this letter from David Cameron saying he's going to present my name to the Queen to get an OBE. I just thought, wow, this. I didn't really think, it was just so surreal. And then when I got the OBE, Prince William gave me the OBE, and it was the first time that he was actually presenting it. So he was really nervous. I was nervous. I was holding his hand the whole way through. But my head became, I've got a big head anyway, because I think I'm brilliant anyhow, because my mum said I'm brilliant. But my
And
head
you are
became,
brilliant.
but my head became even bigger because everybody kept telling me how wonderful. I mean, Prince Charles invited me to St James Palace for an evening reception. Then I got invited by the mayor to the town hall, and people kept telling me how wonderful I was. So I thought I need to get away. So I left and I went, and my mum, being a real Jamaican, you're not allowed to have a big bossy head anyway. She said, "Keep your foot underground," sort of thing. So I left and I went to Kenya. I've got a charity in Kenya with 25 children that I sponsor for school, and I stayed in the slum area with them for a month. And they kept going, "But Auntie Joan, what is the OBE? What is the OBE?" And I said, "Oh, it just means overflowing blessings every day." It just came out like that. So that's what my OBE is to me. It's just overflowing blessings every day. But obviously, Officer of the British Empire for services to children and nursing, which I am very proud of.
And who did you go to Buckingham Palace with?
I took my mother, of course. She didn't want to go at the beginning because she had arthritis in her knees and she didn't think she'd be able to walk around. I said, "Don't worry, I'll get you a wheelchair." She goes, "I'm not sitting in front of the Queen in a wheelchair." Because the Queen won't be looking at you, Mummy. Don't worry about it. But she loved it on the day. She said that she felt that it was an honour for her, that it was really for her as well as for me. So I took my mother and my two nephews, because I've got 5 brothers and sisters and I couldn't figure out which ones. So I took my two nephews with me.
And you've won quite a few awards, which I've mentioned, but some of them are global, they're international. So you just touched upon your charitable work in Africa in particular.
So in Kenya, I have a charity with 25 children. Well, originally it was 25 children being sponsored for school, and it's gone up and down throughout the years. But then I've bought a piece of land over there, and the aim now is to build a primary school, a health centre, and a church. I don't know how I'm going to do it. I just feel this is what God wants me to do. So I'm going to do some big fundraising next year because I've got the land now. And I've seen the architects and they told me all the stuff that needs to be done. I'm working with the Ministry of Health and stuff over there. I go over to Kenya like every year and do medical missions to Kenya. But I also do a medical mission in Ghana every year. I've been doing that for the last 5 years. And I've done one in Uganda as well. And the thing is, although I'm British born, they used to say, "Go back to where you come from." I went to Jamaica when I qualified as a nurse. My mum took me to Jamaica for the first time, and they called me an English girl and a foreigner. But when I go to Uganda, they think I come from Uganda. I go to Ghana, they think I'm Ghanaian. I go to Kenya, they think I'm Kenya. When I went to Nigeria, I almost never left the country because they wouldn't believe that I wasn't British. And they took my English passport away, and they wanted to. I said, "No, no." I said, "Young man, come back here now. Bring me back my passport. I need to get back to the UK immediately." And he went, "Oh," and then he's handed me my passport back. That was the only way to get out of the country.
So,
Yeah.
I mean, you're in Africa now regularly,
Yes.
doing these missions. You've left the NHS now. I know you've set up
Yeah,
your own
I retired
consultancy.
from the NHS in 2019, and in 2020 I set up my consultancy, Joan Myers Consultancy Limited. So I do mentoring and coaching, training and development. Yeah, so I often get asked to do keynote speaks, motivational talks in different places.
So after nearly 40 years in the NHS and retiring, rather than deciding to take a bit of a rest, what you decided to do was set up a consultancy, mentor, and go on missions in Africa, not just in one country, but in three countries, and set up a charity supporting children.
Excellent. And I've got a Woman for Africa award. Yeah, that was amazing. And a Zenith Global Health Award as well for all of different, and more recently, a Minister's Appreciation Award. I just get these awards for, and all I'm doing is my passion where I can actually help these children in those countries. It's just they need the opportunity. Many of them are very, very bright. I mean, one of the guys, he became a lawyer. One of the first girls I sponsored, she said I was like her greatest role model, and she wanted to be like me. So she went in to do nursing. I've got one that's got a diploma in education. She's a teacher. Somebody's gone on to be a mechanic. Somebody's done catering. They've done all different things, and I've had people that have supported me along the way in sponsoring them. So it's really, really good, and it's good to see the transition and the change and the growth when they do really, really well.
Now here's a strange point I'm going to make, because with all of that activity, it must be incredibly difficult for you to keep your garden, your back garden, in good order. Now, that sounds like a really strange statement, but of course, Mr. Alan Titchmarsh found out that your garden needed a bit of work and completely gave the garden a good face. Do you want to just tell us about your experience
Yeah.
on was it ITV? I think it was.
In 2014, so that's 10 years ago, I got a phone call from the Love Your Garden people to say that I was chosen from, there was over 2,000 nominations and it gone down to 200 and I was in the long list. And I didn't really believe, I said, "Well, why are they going to choose me?" And then they went down to 80, then it went down to 40. And I goes, "Yeah, but why would you want to choose me? You always have people that are dying or got something, been in a war or got their legs shot off or had cancer." They said they wanted a good news story. And then I found out it was the Queen's Nurses Institute that nominated me because they worked with the National Garden Scheme. And the National Garden Scheme years ago, when nurses, in the olden days, if nurses didn't get married, they didn't have a pension because it was the husbands that had a pension. They didn't have a pension, so they were really poor and destitute. And somebody decided, one of the rich people in those days, decided to open their garden up and charge people a penny to come to the garden, and the money went towards the nurses. So from there, they've had this history with the National Garden Scheme. So Alan Titchmarsh, they chose me to do the garden, but I didn't even know right up until the end. And it was Dame Elizabeth Anyonu that set me up with them. She asked me to do a talk about Mary Seacole at work. And I said, "But I haven't got time for that. I'm going away. I'm going to Kenya." I was just about leaving to go to Kenya. She goes, "Don't worry, I said, "I can't do a PowerPoint presentation." She said, "I'll do the PowerPoint presentation. Just come along. You know you're good at talking." She said they were doing it for the TV program in preparation for the Mary Seacole statue. I said, "Of all the famous people you've got, why can't..." She goes, "You know you like talking, Joan." So it was all set up for me to do this talk. I went to Kenya on a mission, came back, and as I'm on the way to it, I thought, "Oh yeah, they're supposed to be coming to interview me today." I completely forgot. I got there, the room was packed with people, the cameras were there, and I just thought it was for the Mary Seacole. I did think it was a lot of people in the room that want to know about Mary Seacole, but I thought because the cameras are there, they want to be there. And then Alan Titchmarsh walks through the door. And as he walks through the door, I'm thinking to myself, that man looks very important. He looks very famous. Actually, as he got up to me, I thought, "That's Alan Titchmarsh." And he goes, "Joe, we heard about the lovely work you've been doing. I bet you'd love to have your garden done." I goes, "I would, but you've interrupted my talk about Mary Seacole, so you have to have one of her badges." And he goes, "Okay." And he picked up one of the badges and put it on. And he walked out the room, and I was standing there in shock, like, did that really just happen? And then when he came back in again, I said to everybody, "Do you know who that man is? That's Alan Titchmarsh." And everybody was laughing. They thought it was really funny because they said I was stunned into silence, speechless for at least 30 seconds. But the garden was done in 2014, absolutely beautiful garden. And I said, "I need eco decking. I don't dig up weeds and I don't water plants. So just don't give me any of that stuff that needs stuff done to it." It's an absolutely gorgeous garden. It's got banana plant, it's got palm leaves. I mean, it's absolutely beautiful. Purple and lilac flowers, because purple's my favourite colour. And guess what? My next door neighbour does my garden.
Oh, wow.
I don't do anything to the garden. I just go in and sit in it and enjoy it. And so I look out my garden sometimes. I go, oh, there's somebody in my garden. It's my neighbour. She's digging up the weeds, planting stuff, covering stuff, doing stuff. She's amazing. So for the last 10 years, she's been doing my garden without permission. Actually, I asked her before Alan Titchmarsh came if she didn't mind doing my garden because I said I could see you enjoy doing gardening. You've got a beautiful garden. You could come over and do mine. So there's a little opening at the top of my garden fence that she could just come round anytime she wants. And she's been doing it for years, and she loves it.
So this is Love Your Garden, and I remember seeing images of it on the TV. And at the end, I think you had like a shed or a sort of summer house
Yeah,
at
I've
the
got a
end.
little. I said, could you give me a little prayer house at the bottom of the garden? I'll get up early and prepare for work and pray, and I'll be fine. And what's really amazing, it's now on HGTV, the Love Your Garden program, and I had an email from somebody whose sister-in-law in Australia saw the Love Your Garden program earlier on this year, and phoned her and said, I saw you on TV with somebody holding my niece, and it was me holding this baby. This person got in contact with me to tell me that when I was at Guy's Hospital, her baby was born with a cardiac defect and they thought the baby was going to die. I prayed for the baby and they asked me to be the godmother for the baby. So the baby got baptized, aged 5 days old, on the ward, and then I think I left the ward to work in the community. She said she came back a year later for the baby to have reconstruction surgery. Nobody could find me because I was no longer working in the hospital, so they lost contact with me. That was 34 years ago. That baby is now 34 years old, and she's a paediatric registrar, and she lives in Scotland, and she's married, and she's got 2 children. Amazing.
So that little baby went on to become a paediatric nurse,
Pediatric registrar
registrar.
doctor, yeah. So she could be a consultant, a pediatric medical consultant, yeah.
That is an incredible story, which it kind of epitomizes you, doesn't it, Joan? I mean, everybody you touch, you seem to inspire in some way. And I remember watching that program, and it was so beautiful because in the prayer house, at the end, you also had a picture on the
Of
wall,
Mary
I think,
Seacole.
of Mary Seacole.
Yeah, because I told them, I said, there's a portrait of Mary Seacole, original portrait, and I showed it to my mother, and my mum said it looks like her great great grandmother. So I always say to people, you never know, Mary Seacole could be my great great grandmother. So they put a picture of Mary Seacole in the garden, and Alan Titchmarsh actually put a page up on his website to raise funds for Mary Seacole as well for the statuary.
Wow. So what message would you give to listeners now, whether it be within nursing or outside of the NHS, those that perhaps lack a bit of confidence, perhaps they didn't do it as well at school and don't have the same level of academics that are often required to get certain jobs. What lesson would you give which would inspire them to believe that ordinary people can achieve extraordinary things? What are the qualities that they need, and what would you give to inspire them to believe that they can achieve those things?
One of the things that I have these little sayings, one of them is the challenge to change is your choice. So they're like somebody said, be the change you want to be. It's all well and good blaming. If we keep blaming everybody else, then we're not going to do anything because we're sort of abdicating our own responsibility. But I always say when you have obstacles, obstructions, and oppositions in your way, see them as opportunities and then ask yourself, what opportunity do I have to optimistically overcome my obstacles, see the windows of opportunities, and go through the open doors? So no matter how bad the situation is, you could always change it into an opportunity. Yeah.
Wow, no matter how bad the situation, you can always change that into an opportunity. Are there any other words of inspiration that you would like to share with the listeners?
Yes, I'd like to say to everyone that can hear me that you are one of a kind. Right from his mind, you are a divine design. There's no one else like you on the face of this earth. You're not just one in a million, you're one in 8 billion. And if you were not here, the world would not be the same without you. You are here for a reason, just for a season, not for life. But while you have life, make sure you leave a legacy for life. And the only way to do that is to have a vision, a passion, and a dream and fulfill it to the best of your ability. Thank you.
That is so lovely, Joan. I started by saying one must not just aspire to climb the ladder, they must be the ladder. And what a tremendous ladder you've been. Not just being a ladder, but you've helped people to build ladders. So thank you so much, Joan.
And thank you.
Thank you for joining us for the You Triumph podcast. I've been your host, Trevor Sterling, and this has been a journey of triumphs, challenges, and the power of giving back. If you've enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, like, and leave a review. Your support helps others discover the show and the valuable lessons shared. For more information about You Triumph and how we can assist with motivational speaking, consultancy, or event needs, visit youtriumph.co.uk. Join us next time as we continue to explore the stories and strategies behind success and becoming a ladder for others. Remember, triumph isn't just about climbing the ladder, it's about becoming the ladder and lifting others along the way. I want to express sincere gratitude to our sponsors for their invaluable support. PLG Consultants, Harrison Associates, Moore Barlow Lawyers, the Stephen James Partnership and Radio Jackie have been instrumental in making the You Triumph podcast a reality. To our listeners, I encourage you to check out the great work of these sponsors. It's because of their partnership that we can continue bringing these important stories and insights to you. Thank you once again for standing with us and supporting the You Triumph podcast.